With that in mind, shall we go? Start up. So I'm going to call the meeting to order, and happy to see everybody. It's been a long time. I think December was the last time we did this, so I'm sure you all have had interesting times or not so interesting times in the meantime. First order of business is disclosure of pecuniary interest, and anyone have anything to express on that matter about what we're talking about tonight? I'm assuming no. No hands are waving. Okay, that's great. The next item is the agenda, which we're all looking at the moment, and just confirming that by consensus. Anyone have problems with what's on the agenda? I was in a meeting this morning where there were problems. So, or the minutes. I guess the minutes had problems. Yeah. Hi, Pat.
I was just going to mention, Devlin and I were chatting about the grants and putting a bit of a time limit on that conversation. Otherwise, we could be here for hours. We can roll that conversation over to the second meeting. So before we approve the agenda, should we discuss that format, Devlin, or can we do that once we get to that item?
Let's see where we are when we get to that point. We may fly through it.
Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to bring it up before we approve the agenda. Thanks.
Okay. So with that in mind, everyone's okay with the agenda? Okay, give me the thumbs up. Okay. The minutes. I assume you've read the minutes. Mine's frozen, so I can't see them, but we've all read them. So again, there's a consensus, and we can move on. Okay, the first action item tonight is the grants that we've all been poring over assiduously for quite a while. I was just going to say one thing about it. I'm aware of the fact that if every one of these were approved as is, we would have enough money with money left over. I guess in order to, I'm only just throwing this out there. Do we have to go minute by minute, page by page over every application? Or shall we look at the ones that give us a problem first of all and see if there are some where we have some serious questions or not?
So Brian, I have a spreadsheet all laid out that I produced after reviewing every application. And what I've done is I've made notes that should highlight for you folks so that you know anything that I have a red flag on.
Okay.
And all my red flags are based on our current policy. So know that.
Great.
What I'm going to do, if you're okay with it, Brian, is
absolutely
start from the first one and work my way across. It might be easier to do that. And just do one at a time, because if we don't get through them all in the next hour, we're going to have to pick up where we left off next month. So it might be easier if we just start from the first one and work our way through. But I don't think we're going to have to get into, making sure you've got the application or the financial data in front of you or anything like that at this point. Right now, we'll just do one at a time. I'll share my thoughts, and then you folks can decide on how you want to proceed with that particular grant. Does that sound good?
Great. Take it away, Dorothy.
So Dorothy, just for format, are you going to go, just so we are in consensus, are you going to do your presentation and then go person to person? Each person will comment, and then we'll go, so everybody will get to have a chance to speak rather than raise your hands, and then we'll go answer those questions, just so we lay this out at the beginning. Answer those questions, then Dorothy will address the questions and then go around again if there's any further before you take a consensus vote. And then we'll have one motion at the end, right, Gary? Okay.
And I have one kind of written out already for us.
Okay. Okay. And so rather than try to answer everybody's questions, we'll go through each person. I'll write the question down and I'll answer them all at once. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So, all right, let's begin. The first one in my chart, and I think you all have a similar chart, is the Community Resource Center. They're asking for $3,000 for their school backpack program. This organization has applied for this particular funding in the past, and we've always granted it to them. I had no red flags with that one at all. I'll start with you, Brian. Any questions?
No, I thought it was a very well put together application.
Okay, thank you. Kim?
No, I had nothing with it. No issues at all. And it's been funded before, so no.
Okay. Neil?
No, I don't have any issues. Can I make a suggestion though?
Sure.
If we're going to do it this way, why don't we just ask if anybody has a problem with that, and then we just deal with the
Okay.
people that have the problems, and we don't have to talk to people who are just going to give it a thumbs up. So
Okay, I can do that if you want. Are you okay with that, Carrie? And Pat? Okay. Does anybody have any questions about the Community Resource Center?
Not specifically to the Community Resource Center, but can you just again kind of remind us, for those organizations that did apply last year that were unable to use their money, can you just, because of COVID, they were still able to apply this year, right?
Of course. So that's going to take a step backwards now.
Okay,
So
sorry.
Anybody who did not use their funding last year they're rolled over to this year, so they cannot apply again. So you're not going to see those names up here. Okay, does that make sense? So the Community Resource
Yes.
Center had funding last year, they used it, so they can apply again.
Perfect. No other questions. Thank you.
Perfect. All right. So moving on, now I have to think about this. I'd asked you all to score each application because I need to have that scoring for accountability should I get asked questions later on. I don't believe we need the scoring to determine how much we're going to award to everybody, simply because we have enough funding for everybody. So I'll ask you to probably email those scores to me after our meeting tonight, rather than us going through each one at a time right now. So I guess my question will have to be, we'll have to vote. Do we proceed with the full 3,000 for the Community Resource Center? And I guess the best option for that is a show of hands. Okay, that worked. Does that work for you, Pat? Okay.
Yeah, no, that's great. I was giggling at some people's hands were outside of their screen, but we finally got them all in there. It's all
I
good.
caught them. Okay, great. So perfect. First one down and passed. Good. The second one on the screen for me is the Elora Center for the Arts. They've applied for $5,000 for some satellite learning and art stations at their facility. The red flag that I have to address with you on this particular one is that this organization did apply for OLG funding through the township, and they received their funding. So I just have to scroll down, bear with me. So according to 1.2.9 of the policy, it states organizations that receive other subsidies from the township are ineligible. So just bringing that to your attention, and now we can have conversation. So does anybody have, oh, Neil's got his hand up.
yeah, thank you, Dorothy. I've been going over the application policies, and I am 1.2.9 says if they've got other funding, they don't qualify for this. Now, I know that last year we did these grants before they got the OLG money. So they may give us some grief that they got it. They've already got the OLG money, and it's clear in the policies. So there's two organizations, by the way, this one and the Highland Games, both got money, both have applications in here. And it doesn't fit the criteria that this committee is following. So I don't feel that this committee could approve that. There are options for them under 1.3 that they could apply to the council to override it. But I believe in the best interest of the taxpayers, that's a decision best left for council. And I just, in this committee, I draw concern on both those applications based on the fact they've already received money from the township.
I completely agree with that. As per policy, it's pretty clear, but yeah, that wants to go to council, and I think that's a decision for them to make.
Good catch.
Oh, Pat?
Oh, I was just going to ask Carrie a quick question, or Devlin. Before we take that decision to council, should this committee make a recommendation whether the application on its own merit should receive funding, but doesn't because of that conflict? So there's two pieces to that answer. So first of all, had they not received other funding, do we believe the application is merited? And if yes, then council needs to make that decision. That's my only thought. I know they've received funding every year, and I'm sure the application has merit. I just was going to say that, does council need that information, Neil, to make a decision?
No, I think if we follow the guidelines, and if council wants to issue the money to them, that's a decision for council to make. And I don't think they need this committee to make a recommendation that they put the rules aside and give it to these guys. Let council make that decision, and we make the decisions based on the criteria we have today.
So go ahead, Carrie.
Well, I'm just thinking, Pat, if you want to, in your report to council, when you bring forward the committee's recommendations, you'll have all those that the committee approves. The committee really should not have an opinion on those, but you in your report could bring it to council's attention that 2 were ineligible or 3 were ineligible due to whatever, and leave it in council's hands. But I think Neil's right. It's not for this committee to chirp in on that.
Okay.
Does anybody have any questions in regards to this particular? Okay, so for the minutes, Devlin, I'm assuming the recommendation is going to be based on that. I don't have that point criteria written down, Neil, but based on under the policy, we're going to defer this particular one to council.
I'll dig out the actual.
Okay. I can email
bullet.
it to you. Yep. Okay, perfect. All right, moving on. Elora Environment Center have applied for $3,580 to continue the work of their tree inventory, education, and stewarding. This organization again has applied for similar funding for similar projects, and they've always received the funding. I had no red flags here at all. Any questions or concerns? Brian, you mute it yourself. Unmute yourself.
How did I happen not to be muted? It's a good thing
That's
I didn't say
okay.
anything. I believe it was in this application, I noted that they actually said where the grant would go. They took it away from parts of the budget that weren't probably eligible. So I thought that was a good grantsmanship.
Yeah, because they've been dinged in the past for applying for funding that wasn't eligible in their line items. So now it's very specific how they lay that out, which is great. That's what we want to see, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's good.
We should actually encourage that, because there are a number of areas, a number of these that I read where I wasn't quite sure what we were giving them the money for, but I didn't know, maybe that's a little granular, but
Yeah, this particular organization's applied for funding many, many times in the past, and they do a very good job of applying. So
they do.
okay, if I'm not hearing any questions, are we going to recommend the full amount of $3,580? Can I have a show of hands if we are in favor of the full amount? Okie dokie. I don't need to get into like carried or anything like that, right, Devlin? That's okay, perfect. Awesome. I want to do this right. So the next one, again, Fergus Scottish Festival, that based on Neil's conversation there, we're going to defer that one to council as well, because they too received OLG funding this year. So any questions with that particular one as well? Hearing none, you're seeing any waving hands, then that's what we'll do with that one. We're just flying through these, guys. Grand Celtic Pipe Band, $5,000 for online instruction. Again, this group has applied for funding in the past. This particular application, though, they want to move completely to online instruction for their new band members. I had no red flags there at all. Their budget was pretty weak. They just kind of put in 2 line items of what the drumming was going to cost and what the bagpiping was going to cost to equal $5,000. But other than that, I don't think there were any concerns with it. Anybody have any questions with the Grand Celtic Pipe Band? I'm seeing a lot of shaking of heads. Okay. Do we want to support their full $5,000? Thumbs up. Okay. It looks like we are. Okay. Devlin, you got that? I saw you left for a minute, so okay, perfect. Thanks, everyone. Grand River Church. This is the first time we've ever seen a church apply. Some very different applications this year too. I felt like a lot of them were very social requests, and goes to show the kind of year we're having. So Grand River Church wants to do an outdoor sports field on their property. Basically, there's a big red flag. This is a capital project, and according to our policy, capital projects are not eligible. So that's a huge one. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, Neil?
Not so much a question, but just to confirm what you said. 1.2.11 eliminates capital projects, and this is a capital project. And the problem with approving something like this and not setting it aside is there are probably 75 churches in Center Wellington. And if we put a field on one or pay for upgrades to one, every church, and let's face it, in this environment, they're all struggling. They need to fix windows, floors, doors. It's a tremendous burden on them, and I really feel for them. But if we give this one, we're going to give it to every church in the community, and we just don't have the funds for that. So based on those criteria, it's a capital project, and I would have to speak against it.
Grace, go ahead. Can't hear you.
I just had some questions about a religious organization applying for something like that. And you said it was the first time a church applied. And I wondered, but it does meet the, if it weren't for it being a capital project, would it meet the qualifications for an application?
Well, it's interesting because it doesn't say, in at least not my interpretation, it doesn't exclude them from applying. I'm not sure. That was the first time I've ever seen a church apply. Neil, you can't offer anything to that. No, it doesn't clearly define it in the policy, Grace, to be honest with you, whether they can or can't.
It feels to me like it should be defined because, I don't know, churches are in a little bit different category because they can be quite insular.
Go ahead, Neil. Oh.
Yeah, so if we did get into that debate from that standpoint, Gracie, it is in there, and it would be 1.1.3, which talks about based on at least a majority of members being from the township residents. Yeah. And then you get into splitting hairs, like how many residents go to that church, and then you know, is every church coming forward? And what about the taxpayers who don't have a religious affiliation? Are they going to want their money to go for that? So I think that's the reasons that churches haven't put in for it. However, having said all that, if a church put in and they were running a mental health program or something that benefited the community as a whole, and they weren't putting you must be a member of this church or you must be affiliated with this religion in order to reap the benefits of this program, I would be inclined to give it serious consideration.
That's a
Makes
good
sense.
explanation, Neil. Jennifer.
Yeah, I agree. Like, according to the policy, it's a capital project. So I think this is something that needs to go to council for them. But I did want to add that I'm aware of this church, and I'm not a member of the church. And I'm aware of the programming that they do in the summer. On-site athletics, which has camps all through Center Wellington, think up into Waterloo. They run out of Fergus and Elora in the Salem Public School, usually the Elora Public School, as well as this church. And I know children from all across Center Wellington go to this camp, and they offer amazing programming for the children. It's a really great program. It's non-denominational. It's very sports and athletic focused. They have a lot of, they have really good rates. They also do a lot of like bursary opportunities for those like with lower incomes. Like, it's a really great organization. And I do know that a lot of children are involved in these camps across Center Wellington. This is the church, however, applying for it, not the camp organization, but I think they are a regular, it's probably coming because they do run these camp programs out there, and they want the kids outside and doing as much with them as they can. So anyways, I just wanted to give a little bit of background because it is a really great programs that they run out of there that I think serve well all residents of Center Wellington.
Well, that's good to know. Thank you. Brian.
I was just going to say, when you say that, it's a shame that they applied the wrong way, because if they'd applied for the program in some way, it might have had legs. So that might be something in future that they should be aware of. They clearly didn't read the document very carefully.
And unfortunately,
so
they also missed a big thing too. The original application came through $30,000. So they didn't realize that the cap was 5. So it's very clearly a capital project when you're applying for 30 grand, right?
Yeah. I would say, again, it's very sports focused. So I know they run lacrosse, soccer, and road hockey, like floor hockey. So I can see where like having a pad would be beneficial, but yeah. No, I agree though with the decision. Unfortunately, it doesn't meet the criteria at this time.
Okay. Any other questions? So you have the ability to like just say that particular one is ineligible because of capital funding. Or am I hearing that, or am I hearing we're going to defer to council to make a decision?
I personally, I think it doesn't meet the criteria because it's a capital project.
Right. Okay. So everybody in agreement with that? Okay, great. Moving on, Met's Pumpkin Fest. This is the first time for them as well. I had to find out if Met's was even in Central Wellington, and yes, they are. They're a little hamlet outside. Yeah. They're asking for $500. This is the first time a rural community has ever applied for funding. I understand that trophies make it ineligible, but they're not looking for trophies. They're looking for plaques, to fund plaques on the trophies. So there you go. They're being creative. So I think, when you go back to the objective of the grant itself, it states, to provide, the program is to provide financial assistance to enhance the quality of life for the residents of the Township of Center Wellington, so on and so forth. Even though that Pumpkin Fest is out in Metz, it's open to everybody to attend. And I'm sure they see lots of people from Central Wellington. So the short of it is don't see any red flags with this particular one. Does anybody have any questions? Not for $500. Am I hearing we're going to support the $500?
Yeah.
Okie dokie, good. Okay. Wow, we're down to 3, you guys, and we haven't even been at it a half an hour. This is. I think we should do our grants this way every time. So Portage, is everybody familiar with this organization? I'm sure you are. Yeah. So they've applied for $5,000 to rent a bunker house for new kids coming into their program, so that they can self-isolate before being part of the going into the main program in their main building, I guess. A couple red flags. One of them is, you know, the funding is supposed to go towards a program that is a benefit for a lot of people in Center Wellington. I don't see this as a benefit for many people in Center Wellington. In fact, I don't know how many people from Center Wellington would be in their program. I think their program is fabulous. I think what they do is amazing. I'm not sure this is going to benefit Center Wellington in any way. That's just my comment. Rent is not eligible for funding. And they very clearly state they're renting a bunker. This bunker, I assume, is probably a sea can of some sort that they're going to convert into a bunker. That's the only way I can interpret it. I don't know what else a bunker would be. I call my basement sometimes a bunker, so I don't think it's that. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention, and please ask questions. I think this is one that does generate some conversation right now. Neil, oh.
You can let Jennifer go first this time if you want.
Okay.
Oh, no.
Jennifer.
I was just going to say, in terms of benefiting Center Wellington, I would kind of disagree on that. I think it's another organization that's, you know, promoting like mental health, and, you know, we be kind of a leader, a community leader in that way. I think there's a lot of staff, a lot of volunteers from Center Wellington that are connected with that organization in parts of all the fundraising and stuff that they do. So I do think that they're very important. I think organization within Center Wellington. So I would be happy to support it in that way. Absolutely. I don't know, like in terms of the rental, I don't think it's like a rental in the ongoing kind of sense that, like, I think the intent of the policy would have been written for.
Right.
In my mind, I would be a yes to both, to overcome both of those issues.
Neil?
Yeah.
And very good point, Jennifer.
Yeah, those are good points, Jennifer.
Yeah.
And I looked at 1.1.3, which talked about the majority of their members or residents being from Center Wellington. And I know, having worked in corrections and having had some interaction, albeit 20 years ago with Portage, they are a great organization and they do really, really good work. But when you go through their financials, you see that $3.3 million comes from the federal or the provincial government, from corrections and community and social services to fund their operations. And so maybe this is the counselor coming out in me. They're having to do this because of the COVID, and they're having to rent stuff to put things aside. And I just think there's not that many Township of Center Wellington residents getting treatment there. There may be 5 or 6, but would it classify as a majority? And I think the province needs to step up and help them out a little bit more here. But I will say this to the group: I will keep an open mind, and you guys can set to changing my mind. But I'm thinking they don't meet the criteria because we're paying for rental on a temporary residence, and that's not in there. And I don't think they service the majority of the residents. I know a lot of people that volunteer for this. I've donated to people who have done their ride for these guys. I think this is a great program. I just don't think it meets our criteria. But like I said, you guys can convince me otherwise.
Kurt?
Yeah, just I kind of agree with lots of the points made. My initial thoughts, though, were still I didn't get the connection to the spirit of this particular these grants and Portage as far as that community connection. I know there are lots of people in the community who are associated with Portage. For the past several months, they have done a ton of fundraising for this project. So you have seen people virtually, because a lot of their fundraising events have been virtual, but people in the community know of Portage and have supported Portage because they've been doing a lot of fundraising. But in terms of that community connection and benefit to our community, I just don't think it falls within the scope of this particular grant.
Okay. Any other comments? This is a tough one. And I knew this was going to be probably the toughest one. Grace, did you have?
What happens to money that isn't used this year? Does it roll over to another year?
This particular one won't roll over because it's in our operating budget. So the funds need to be used this year. It does not roll over to 2022.
So where do the funds go? They go back to
the general coffers,
taxes.
basically. Yeah. Yes, Neil.
There are things that we might be able to do, Gracie, but I got the sense of what you're thinking. If we've got the money, give it to them now. And the only problem I have with that is if we break criteria once, we're gonna have to change the criteria, and then we're gonna be into this year after year after year.
So what is the chief anti-sentiment about this? Because it meets an awful lot of the criteria in terms of judging. Is it the fact that the actual people who can participate do not constitute a very large number of local people? Because there's nothing about the program that says that any number of local people couldn't be involved. We just don't happen to have enough people that are going down that road, I guess, to make it significant. So
and Brian, we don't know. There could be many Center Wellington kids out there. We don't know that, right? So yeah, this is a tough one, you guys, and we can come back to it if you want when we finish. I knew this was going to be the tough one. So it's a big ask, 5,000. It's a great program. And I think there's another one in Quebec, 2 or 3 in Canada. I'm not sure. 4? Wow. So we can put a pin in this one if you want and come back and see where we are at the end. Or let's keep the discussion going.
Given the fact that they've never requested money before, and this is an unusual situation with COVID, and they may need bunkers or whatever for isolation, it feels like we should maybe consider it. Although I do, so Neil, your main issue was that you feel the government should be funding this from the provincial, not us.
Yeah, and I look at it, I don't know how many people or if there's even anybody from Center Wellington being treated out there, and we're taking local residents' tax dollars and funding, and listen, I feel for them. It's a funding gap that every ministry is facing. And I look at it like they're funded $3.3 million from the provincial government because they're still largely corrections and social services. So they're being funneled people. When I worked in corrections, when somebody was arrested and they had a drug problem, to keep them out of the prison system, they sent them to places like Portage. And that's how I was involved with Portage in the past. And those residents weren't from here. They were coming for the treatment center. And so I have a hard time looking at taxpayers in a crisis like this where we're trying to manage money as tightly as possible and saying, you know, we've got these kids and they need treatment. Don't get me wrong. I think this is a great program, but they're coming from outside the community. And I think that's what the provincial or the county money is for. But it's, I'm not sure that it's our place to be funding that. But like I said, I can be taught, you know, because I like the program and I don't want to see kids go without treatment because I know the value.
Mhm. Yes, Jennifer.
Hi. Again, I think if they've met all other criteria, the rent one is a little, but I think we can say it's
Oh, it's
not
gray.
the
It's gray.
ongoing. Yeah, it's a little gray, but in terms of that, like, I think you can argue sometimes like a lot of these serving their community, how it serves our community. I agree with everything that we've just approved, but we have approved events. And, you know, children's programs where children from all over the place could be coming to those just because, you know, an employment, thinking of the community resource center and the backpacks or the children, that could be different, but like a lot of these, like the pumpkin patch to like the festival to, you know, like you're not only serving Center Wellington in there. So I don't know. I think, again, if we were kind of sitting with and going through our rankings and we had to start eliminating people, then I think that these would become bigger flags. But at this point, I think, I don't know. Like I said, I'm for this application.
Maybe, did everybody have the opportunity to vote or to score this particular application?
Yep.
Why don't we start, how about we go around to everybody? And if you have a score, give me your score. And then if you have any other comments, we can address them that way. Brian, do you want to begin?
I gave almost everybody, I did the 104 and the ones that had a significant issue, I took some off. So I scored this at 95. A lot of them met, from my point of view, met the criteria. But if you want it to be finer than that, I mean, we can, but.
So my question is, so you're supporting this particular grant, Brian? Yeah,
It's not, it wouldn't be my very favorite one or the highest ranking one, but I think that the pros outweigh the negatives. I'm not sure that I understand what Neil is saying. There's a bit of a sticky point there. And I would bow to if it really is the fact that it's ineligible, then I would withdraw my vote, and same as the playground for the church.
Okay.
But to me it's good enough that I would pass it unless somebody can, really convince me that it's not a closed program. It's a community resource in many ways. So, okay. And I don't think they're not building a capital project. So.
Okay, so I'm going to put you down as a yes. Unless you go to, okay. Kim?
I would like to give it to Portage, but I'm going to have to be a no. Partly because, well, when Jennifer was mentioning about the Pumpkin Fest and that, like, those things have a bigger economic impact, and then your community service and participation in that is really high for events and like your backpacks and your lunches. That really involves the community and really involves the youth of Center Wellington. Whereas with Portage, it's like, it's a rental of a building. Like, I wish they had applied for something else. Like maybe it had applied for an event to do the fundraising, to be able to rent the bunker, like to go around it differently is what I'm saying, but it's a direct rental. And if it was an event, then that would have an economic impact on the community by bringing people from outside. It would also benefit and create the community service and the participation. So I have to be a no just based on what they're asking the money for.
Okay. No, good explanation. Thank you. Neil, forgive me, do you vote or not?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
And I have one vote like everybody else. So I go with whatever the committee comes up with. But I think I've made my concerns clear. So I would be a no.
Okay. Grace? So I'm having to write this all down because I'll never remember all this. Grace?
This is a really tough one.
I know. But I think this is the only way to do it, is to hear individually from everybody at this point.
I think if we were trying to, really needing to eliminate one, then it would be one to eliminate, particularly because of the community involvement. But I think sometimes I agree with Jennifer in that, like, sometimes it can be subtle. The effect that a program like that has on our community can be a powerfully positive one. And so even though they may not be gathering, as Kim said, for an event, it's a powerful thing that we have in the community, that affects the community in a positive way, in the way we think, and addiction is such a huge thing in our society. I think I'd have to say yes. If we were having to eliminate something, then I might have to say no, but I think I'd have to say yes.
Okay, thank you. Jennifer, I think we know. Do you have any other comments?
No, you know my position. I do hear, I think Kim did make some good points, and I think it's a shame. And I think if they would have maybe, like you said, changed their application a lot, they might have had a little bit more support and maybe met the criteria a little bit more. But yeah, I still remain yes.
Okay, thank you. Dean?
It's some great information being talked about here. Very informative. We all know of Portage, that we have the program locally, but outside of their fundraising and their ways to seek out to be involved in the community, we don't have a full understanding or the impact that they really make on our community. We're basing this on an assumption that we're all quite sure on, that it's not necessarily for the residents of Center Wellington. It's a program based on who needs it, and they do a great job, but they don't qualify for what this grant is actually for. I think as a group, we would love to offer support to them, but they still need, and we need to follow the rules that have been outlined on. It is a grant that's to affect residents and the community that we're representing. So I am a no for this one.
Thanks, Dean. Well, Kurt, you get to play the mayor right now and break the tie. No pressure.
I would just be a no, not because I'm unsupportive of the place, but I don't think it is a good fit for this grant for the reasons I stated before. It exists within our community, but I don't know to what extent the impact is there for our community. Also, just the spirit of the grant, it's been mentioned, they're asking for a building on site, and that doesn't really fit what this grant is all about. And finally, where we have pushed on a couple requests for funds because they have already received funds from other sources in the township. Portage has not, but I know that they have a variety of other sources of funding. I don't think that they've completed their fundraising, but I know that they have been quite successful accessing funds through other sources. I think they're doing okay.
Thanks very much.
I don't know if I had to say that much, but.
No, conversation's good. Yeah, you have made some very good points. Thank you. So based on that, it's 4-3 for a no on that particular grant. Okay, moving along. The Children's Foundation, for their Food and Friends program in local schools, they provide nutritious snacks and food to all of our schools in Center Wellington. They have applied for this in the past. They've been granted the funding. There were no red flags for this particular one. Do you have any questions? Anybody have any questions? Nope. Can I see a show of hands? Are we going to support the full 5,000 again? Very good. Thank you. And last but not least, and we've got 13 minutes to go. The Wellington Pregnancy Center. Again, this is one of those unusual ones that are coming through from the social need aspect. And I'm not surprised given the year that we've had again. So they're asking for $1,000 to purchase baby supplies for women needing assistance for their babies. Another conversation is going to come out of this one, I'm sure. Once again, it meets a very, very small need of the population. Is it a need that's required? Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm going to have to open it up to the floor again for this one, folks. Sorry to do that. Any other question? Anybody have questions in regards to this? And it might come down that we may have to do a vote again. Jennifer.
Sorry, Dorothy, just to clarify, so the only thing we're questioning is in terms of the scope that it might serve.
The reach of the community that it's getting to.
Yeah. There was no other issues though that were flagged. Okay.
No.
All right. I know they do specifically say, you know, they are here to serve the CW community and North Wellington, but yeah.
And North Wellington, right? Yeah, because they also get funding from North Wellington. So, yeah. Questions? Neil?
Yeah, I had some concerns about this one at the start, but I did some research this afternoon and I talked to a lot of people, and I think this is something that unfortunately is needed, and a lot of people are struggling, and it's something that I think I can support, particularly in this environment.
Thank you. Brian?
Their intent is that they could be serving any number of people. There's no limit. Much the same way I was arguing re the portage. It may be a small number of people they're serving, but it could be a much bigger one, but it's open to anybody. And that's the key thing. My only concern about this is, why did they only ask for $1,000? I wish they'd ask for more.
That was my question. Can we not give them more?
Yeah, it doesn't buy a lot of diapers and whatnot for $1,000. Yes, Kim.
So much for us lefties. I wanted to give away money. Thanks.
Thank you.
I just had a question in regards to their, like the Wellington Pregnancy Care Center. On their website, it's kind of specifically directed that they assist and help people during and after unplanned pregnancies. So is it only unplanned pregnancy people that they deal with, or is it anybody that's expecting that they deal with?
I think because they're only asking for $1,000, I think it's unplanned. Like women that are pregnant and have nowhere to turn, right?
Okay.
Because if you read they break it down as to how many diapers and things that $1,000 will get them. And it's not a lot. Uh-oh. Sorry. Did you see what happened there? I lost you all. I have it here. 20 boxes of wipes, I'm assuming, 5 boxes of 18 packs of diapers, and baby formula is what they purchased for $1,000. It's not very much.
And the car seat fund. Is that it as well? Or that's
I
extra?
think they're
Well, no,
only
that's-
asking
that's
for,
Over and
That's-
above. They didn't ask
Oh,
for that.
yeah.
So I'm happy to go around the room again, and we may have to do a vote on this one. Brian? How about, no, I'm going to start. Oh, yeah, you're in favor? Okay. Kim?
I'm in favor. I just had questions about, but that's.
Oh, no, please, do you have any more
No,
questions?
it was just about if it's
Okay.
only specifically for that or if it's anybody in the community can have it, because that makes your reach for the percentage of Centerville population even smaller, so.
And you know what? It may be that case, like somebody may have a child but still need help and they go there. I don't know. I would hope that they would not turn anybody away from the community if that were the case.
Yeah.
Imagine that. Neil? Grace? Jennifer?
Yes.
Dean?
Yes.
Kurt, you've moved places. There you are.
I'm
Kurt?
here. I'm in approval.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then that's it. And I'm assuming we'll award the full $1,000. It's not very much. That's all we have, folks. Oh, so let me just add one more thing. So it is a very different year this year for our grants. We've got some very unusual asks here. And I think it is because of COVID. Next year, we're going to have a very different, I believe, situation because we've got a lot of groups up here that have applied because they weren't able to use their money this year. So I think we'll have a very different grants to go through next year, and we're going to see our usual ones that come through, especially event-based ones. So this year was a bit tougher because of very unusual circumstances, but we got through them. And it looks like so just to refresh my memory, we're only referring the two, Alora Center for the Arts and the British Scottish Festival, we're bringing those to council to make a decision, right? Everything else is done. Okay. Thank you very much, by the way, everyone. That was well done, and we did it with under an hour. That's impressive. Neil, you have a question, sorry.
Yeah, I want you to just help me with the math here for a little bit, as I've got an idea, because anything that we don't give out, and I know Gracie was hinting away there that if we had extra money, let's just give it. And I'm a one that says let's stick to the criteria. But I do know that the money that's left over goes into that deep dark hole of operations. And this is COVID, and it's a very difficult time for everybody. And I've got an idea brewing, and I want to, if you can help me with the math, Dorothy, how much money did we have available tonight, which was about 49,000, right?
Yeah.
And we gave away 26 tonight. Is that right?
No. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I missed one. Sorry. Hang on.
Okay.
Laptop's in the way.
Yeah,
Just
you
a
do the
second.
math.
Okay, that didn't work out. Give me a sec.
Okay, take your time. I want to get the numbers right so I know what we're dealing with here.
Yeah, forget the formula. I'm going to do it with my calculator.
Okay. I see what I had, Dorothy. I think we gave 18.5 away tonight, right?
Yep.
I have 18.35, Neil.
Oh, okay, 18.35, is that what you had?
Oh, I have
18.5. I think it's
18.
18.5.
Okay,
Okay, and we had 49 to begin with, right?
that's correct.
And so that left us with, what do we get, 26,000 left over, is that right?
I'm just trying to put it all together here. This is not working out. What am I doing wrong here? I'm just going to round it up. 49 minus the 18. What did you say?
18.5
Is 30,500.
is 30,500. We set 10 aside, right? Because we've got the two,
In case of the
in
Scottish
case
Festival. and-
council
yeah.
reverses that
So-
decision. So
Which
that
one?
sets 10 aside. So we have, there was
20.
35, not 35,000, but 30,500.
Yeah.
So we got 20,500 in unused grant money. So
That's
Carrie,
correct.
Carrie, you can shut me up if I'm off base here. And Pat, don't have a heart attack. We had we've been struggling as a council with COVID, and everybody's been struggling with COVID. And mental health is a big issue of mine. And actually, Councillor Kittrich brought up something he was trying to formulate as far as committees and neighborhood committees go. And as I was looking at this money that was left over, and I thought, how can we put it best to use instead of it going into a black hole? I mean, I'm okay putting it into the black hole and reducing costs and having a surplus at the end that we in council can have an argument. But I'm wondering if this committee would be interested in putting forward a recommendation to council that we put the remainder of this money, which would be about 20,500, into what I'm going to call a neighborhood fund. And then we allow neighborhoods, to have, when COVID is over, because this isn't going to happen as long as COVID's here. But once COVID is over, neighbors could go to the parks and have events, have picnics in the park, and they can have barbecues in the parks. They can bring the neighborhoods together again for the sake of everybody's mental health. And then we would create this fund, and they could apply for we'd have to put a policy together quickly, up to $500, and to contribute to that, so that people can start coming out and getting together and getting out in the fresh air with their neighbors again, and start to build a sense of community again after all of this is over. The only stipulation I would put on it, because the one thing I'll always fight against, is that township money should never be used for alcohol. So it would be, if you wanted to buy food, the hot dogs, the hamburgers, or whatever, you could get up to $500 each neighborhood who put a committee together and wanted to do something like this. Needs to be a simple process, so we're not having anybody to go through a long process. I would actually be happy to have staff administer the money. Is that something that this council finds or this committee finds interesting, or am I offline? Carrie, am I allowed to make that? She's sitting there going, shut up.
Well, I mean, I think it's a great idea, and I know there's some work being done behind the scenes on this. But we have a deferred notice of motion, so it's a little premature for this committee to be jumping that. But I think it's an excellent idea. Is it part of this grant program? Probably not. Could the surplus funds be used for that, or should council fund that separately? Those are things. You don't want to give this money back, because next year you may have more asks than you have money. So I wouldn't suggest you give it up so easily. I think if council wants to go in that direction, they should fund that from some other avenue, and keep your community grants to yourself.
Okay, so can I get clarification on that? Then this money, if we don't give it out as grants this year, does it carry over to the grants next year? So it's if we had 49,000 this year and we've got 20 or 30 unspent, it gets added to next year's, or is it's just gone?
No, I believe it would be gone. So you might want to see if there's any more asks, or consider topping others up or giving more. I don't know, but no, it will not roll over, because each budget council looks at the amount that it gives.
Right. But what you're telling me is if we made a recommendation, we have no authority over council, but if we made the recommendation that they use the remainder of this money for a fund such as that, because these guys thought it was a good idea, council's going to make that decision ultimately. we're not allowed to do that. It wouldn't, that money wouldn't, we can't use this money for that? Is that what you're
Oh,
saying?
I wouldn't say you can't use it. I just caution giving up your money. I think if council wants to do that neighborhood thing, it should find that money somewhere else, either in the surplus or some other avenue. But again, that's my opinion. You might want to just wait until that notice of motion is dealt with in February,
Right.
and maybe consider that. There's no rush to, I mean, you've done your work. There might be something else that comes along.
Jennifer, I think you had a question.
Yeah, just a comment. I personally think the neighborhood idea is wonderful. But again, it doesn't sound like that's for this committee. I don't like the idea that this money is just, especially in this year when there's so many organizations having gone through such a hard time, that's just going to end back up in the general account. I'm just kind of looking even at the two, we've sent 2 to council and then the 2 we declined. Would we be able to kind of go back to those 2 organizations we declined, but say, okay, so there was the church, for example, that does the camps. Say, like, unfortunately, as per the policy, we can't, approve a capital budget. However, within, I don't know, 30 days or something, or, if you were to submit, an application, something that would be able to be covered, like I'm sure, again, there's sports equipment and a whole bunch of other things and supplies they still need for this camps. If there's a way to maybe give it some further consideration, and then even potentially to Portage, kind of like Kim said, where we kind of focus on the value to the community, maybe potentially saying, like, if there's like, events that are coming up that, have expenses that, could whatever, again, just kind of showing them where they were not eligible because of the policy, but maybe giving them an opportunity, I don't know, or if there is that, so much money, do we open it back up and extend a deadline to allow a further intake of other organizations to increase it? I don't know. It's just a shame that in all the, this year, especially that, this money is not being used. It'd be great, whether neighborhood group or, some eligible organizations.
I'm just looking something up. Give me a sec.
Pat had a question. Why don't we let her talk while you're looking?
Hi, everybody. So first of all, I take very offensive that you consider our budget a big black hole. We do try and spend economically and save the township as much money as we can. And of course, just from a community services perspective, we are in tough times too with the shutdowns and the lockdowns and lack of revenue. So it will not be unused money. But I did have a couple ideas. One is just to, rather than be specific for the ask to council, would be to just ask for direction from council. And it is the desire of this community to, or this committee, to see that additional 20,000 or whatever it ends up being, still being applied for in some way to benefit the community. And a second option would be to make a recommendation that it would go to, I don't know if I'm going to say it, the Community Foundation Fund that continues to give out funds and evaluate applications for COVID relief. They have a COVID relief fund that goes specifically, I think, to Center Wellington, or you can make a specific direction to that. So those are a couple of options, a little bit more. I love Neil's idea. I'm just, it's conceptual at this point. Difficult for us to wrap our brains around exactly how we would give that out. I like a beer fund like the rest of us, but just kidding, Neil, of course, just food and hot dogs. But those are some ideas. So one is instead go back and ask council to consider more direction to give away the rest of the money, or make a recommendation to the Community Foundation for COVID relief. Those are two options that are a bit more generic. It's not telling council what to do, it's just some thoughts. Anyways, that's all I have to say. Dorothy looks like she's looked up whatever she found.
Well, no, I just went back to the policy again, and there's one point in there that says the Community Services Advisory Committee and/or council reserves the right to request any applicant to participate in an interview in order to further clarify information within their application. So we could bring in Grand River Church, and we can bring in Portage and do an interview with them and ask further questions about their application. So we are completely clear on what they are applying for. That's an option. I like Pat's option too. And by the way, I love Neil's idea. I'm all for a party and I'll organize it. I'll volunteer. But the other thing is with the funding for the community foundation, we could then refer these two groups to that organization to apply for funding through them. Since they don't meet our criteria, we recommend you go through community foundations as another option. Because yeah, I wish we could give our money to everybody on this list, but we can't set that precedence for going forward. We're not going to be in COVID, hope to God, next year. So we have to be really cautious of what we're doing here and make sure that this doesn't come back to bite us next time. That's all. So we've got a few options right now, but I do love Neil's idea too.
Well, can we refer to council or defer to council, but offer a couple of suggestions? In other words, just don't say, what would you like to do with the money, but say, or offer the options that the three of you have thrown out to, as possibilities. And maybe this is council's job to decide what.
Brian, excuse me. I think Dean had a question.
Okay.
Sorry, Dean.
No problem. Just speaking to what you just spoke of, Dorothy, we're starting to get so many layers and different ideas of what to do with these funds. Do we just want to back right up to how you interpreted that read, that we have the opportunity to go back to these groups for an interview? And should that be the first step that we take in this before we proceed any further?
Whoops. You know what? We can make that decision right now and bring both those groups in. It is going to delay the process. We'll have to do it for next month, but I don't think that's going to be an issue. I'm just, I keep going back to the policy that is an option, that is something right in our policy right now. So I didn't want to get ignored. Kim, do you have a question?
If we bring them back in for an interview to question them on their application and to qualify what they're doing, are they able to change it? Like if we're asking Portage, what exactly are you spending this money on? And they're like, yeah, we're going to get a sea can, we're going to rent it. And that's what we're doing. Are they able to go and change the application on the spot so that it fits within what qualifies, or is that it? Like,
I don't think so. I wouldn't encourage that. I think if we're going to change their application, we'd have to go back to council for approval, like for direction on that. Am I correct, Pat? Yeah.
Well, it's a can of worms, only that you're setting a precedence for future. Every group had the opportunity to inquire prior to applying what was eligible, what wasn't, how much could they apply for. And a lot of groups do call Dorothy to clarify their application. So to that end, I'm not sure having them come in will change your minds on one like the church, because it is for a capital project. And with Portage, the conversation might be about how many Centre Wellington, you could ask back, how many Centre Wellington residents benefit from the program from a number or percentage. That is the question you could ask to
they may not
get
be
clarity.
able to disclose though.
Exactly. So
Privacy.
I don't know whether you're going to be any further ahead.
Yeah.
Unless you allow them to change their application, which I think is a slippery slope.
Yeah. Then I don't see a point really in having them all come in for like a meeting and waiting another 30 days or whatever to have a meeting in regards to it.
No, it's not going to change their application, because that Pat said it, that's a slippery slope. We don't want to go there. So I think we're back to Pat's two recommendations. Or did you defer the decision to council? Did you bring that one in, Pat?
I said ask for basically state that the committee would like to allocate these funds to the community and looks to council for direction.
Right,
And you
right.
could give Neil's idea or some other ideas, or the community foundation for COVID relief is the other option.
Right.
But, I mean, I'd like to hear from Neil what he thinks of deferring it back to council and how he feels that conversation might go, and whether we should give them more direction than that in our request.
I think that was well done, Pat, and that's why you're smarter than I am, and you've been doing this a lot longer. Defer it back to council and ask for guidance from them, and saying that, you know, you can add in that we had this discussion, and Devlin, you can word it however you want. I think you would get support from council because we've had that discussion that we could use it for an idea that was being kicked around, but that is a decision for council, and ask for more guidance from you guys, and that this committee is willing to oversee those funds. I think that would be probably the best way to do it.
So Devlin, you got should Carrie or Devlin, should we do this in 2 motions then? Approve the ones we've approved, and then put a second motion together for the remaining funds, or recommendation to council?
He carries tires spinning there, so
Yeah, if you were going to, and the balance be forwarded to community foundation, I would say do it all in one. But if you're leaning more towards getting direction for the balance, then yeah, you should probably do 2. That way you don't complicate it for council. You make it simple. Here's what we have, and here's what we're asking for direction. The problem with the direction is, I don't know what you're going to get. At least with a recommendation to Community Futures or Community Foundation, you know, the money, like the grant program has been dispersed. You've made a recommendation for the entire funds, and you've done your job. What you're going to get back without Pat's guidance, I'm not sure. Like, Pat, you're gonna have to lead council, or we're going to be all over the place with that 20 grand. We're going to be talking for 4 hours about that 20 grand. Not that I'm selfish and don't want to spend 4 hours talking about 20 grand, but you know damn well we're going to spend 20 hours talking about, or 4 hours talking about 20 grand. My piece.
Then do you have an alternative? What would you suggest how would you suggest we say it then?
I think Neil has a question.
No, I would suggest that we approve the grants that we've approved, and then take the remainder of the funds, and I would give them the either or option, Carrie. I know you don't want to spend 4 hours, but I think the Community Foundation is something that I support, and I've worked closely with them, and their leadership is, I work closely with them in the mental health field and the distribution of funds there. I just think this is something different, and I think we had a start of something at council the other day, and I think that you would get a buy into this fairly quickly. I don't think it would take 4 hours, but I want to give them the opportunity to discuss it, and I just want to make sure that this committee supports it, because if you don't, then we'll let council have the argument over it. But I think it's a good concept that if we took it to council, we'd get through this fairly quickly. My thought.
Okay. Anyone else? Are we going to proceed with a motion?
read it. Oh, I think Brian's frozen.
Am I?
I
No?
think you had a sample motion, Devlin. Did you prepare?
I do. Why don't we deal with that first, and then you can deal with the excess funds. So I have, and just check to make sure I have the right numbers for each grant here as well as we go through. So that the Community Services Advisory Committee recommends the following organizations receive funding through the Community Grant Program. Grand Celtic Pipe Band, I should say. 5,000. Food and Friends, 5,000. Alora Environment Center, 3,500.
Sorry,
Community
Devlin,
Resource-
Devlin, sorry. It's not the Food and Friends, it's the Children's Foundation that got the 5,000. The program is called Food and Friends.
Okay, then we have the Alora Environment Center for 3,500. The Community
3580.
3,580. That's why we're doing this. Community Resource Center, 3,000. Wellington Pregnancy Care Center, 1,000. And Met's Pumpkin Fest, 500. Just need a mover and a seconder.
Jennifer moves. And Kimberly seconds. Right?
Thank you.
I still think you need to do an all in favor there, Ryan, just to make it official.
Just
Okay.
all in.
I know
all
you
in-
can't see everybody on the screen, so I
Well, you'll
think
help-
we can
you'll
help you with
me out.
that.
All in favor,
Yeah.
please raise your hand.
That's everybody, Brian.
Okay, great. Thank you. And now the second motion. Or will we wait a little while for him to create it?
No, I've got kind of a rough draft, and again, we can work on it as we go because it's short. So that excess funds of 20,000 are referred back to council to disperse to community funds.
I would not put a total of 20,000 because it may be 30 if they decline Alora Center
Yeah.
for the Arts and
Sure.
and or Scottish Festival. So just say that any excess funds be distributed. That's my thought. Just so it's clear.
Works for me.
Okay, someone move the motion.
Who did we
Grace
direct
Perry?
it to go to?
So what?
Who is it that it says in the motion that we're directing that the money go to?
I just have
Community.
community funds in there. We can be more
So-
specific if we'd
There were
like.
two concepts, right? So that they could pick either, right? It was either the neighborhoods program that we talked about now, or it's give it to the community foundation. Right? It's an either or, so that council will have the decision to make.
Okay, so to disperse to the neighborhood program or the community foundation.
Do we need to classify the
Carrie
neighborhood?
doesn't like this. Those are good faces, Carrie.
I don't know whether you want to, I mean, I thought you were just going to defer the ballot, like the decision on the ballots to council rather than, you can't defer and then tell them what to do. So it's either you defer to council to make a decision or you recommend that they pick one or both or whatever. So you either defer to council to make the decision or you recommend something. You can't have it, you can't ride that fence.
I think then we're recommending then.
Yeah, you guys have to figure out, are you gonna just leave it up to council to figure out the balance? Or are you gonna suggest that they could use the balance, split the balance even, between the community foundation and funding any neighborhood wellness initiatives?
Ooh, I like that wording.
Yeah, that's what I would prefer.
Yeah,
As
yeah.
opposed to the community fund, the community foundation, I would prefer to be a neighborhood wellness initiative from the township. And let's run with that and see what that comes out of as a council discussion. But to me, that's why we pay you the big bucks, Carrie, to do the clarification like that.
That's why we
And
bring her along.
It can be split between both though, because if we end up with $20,000 left over, like 10,000 into an initiative and 10,000 into the foundation, that's a pretty good sum going to either or. So
It is. And the neighborhoods thing it's going to be slow to get off the ground because of COVID and to develop some kind of a application process or something. So maybe 20 grand for one is too much.
And this could be
So-
30 grand, right? If they don't approve the other two applications. So we could be
Yes.
looking at 30 grand.
Yep, and you could just say, and the balance be divided between neighborhood wellness initiatives or the community foundation.
Just for clarity, I'm looking on the Community Foundation's website. It's the Central Wellington Community Foundations, and then you can direct the funding. And what they have going on is a COVID-19 community response fund where groups can apply, I think it's to up to 1,500, addressing immediate needs in the areas of food, transportation, technology, and mental wellness. So, so the question is, do you want to just have it go generically to community foundations because they have many funds? Or do you want to be specific to the COVID-19 Community Response Fund?
That sounds good. Do we want to do a little straw poll, say,
Mhm.
among
I
the
like the
members?
COVID.
Jennifer?
I'd be in support of either way, but yeah, I also like the Communities Foundation COVID relief. And I like how we could, because we can specify that for Center Wellington. I think I heard.
Great. Anyone else want to chime in? So I'm assuming we have a consensus on the wording then?
Yeah, do you want me to read it out for you again to make sure everybody's happy?
That'd be great.
So we have that CSAC recommends that the excess balance is referred back to council to disperse between neighborhood wellness initiatives and the Center Wellington Community Foundation COVID-19 Community Response Fund.
Anyone care to move? Make the motion. Kimberly? And I'm not seeing any more screens, so I don't know. Jennifer?
Jean down there.
Grace? Okay, any further discussion or any discussion at this point? All in favor, raise your hand.
Good.
That was everyone, Brian. I
Great.
think.
Thank you. Does this end the grant discussion? Is there any other remaining details?
Thanks, everyone.
Wow, well done. The next item, we're going to turn it over to Matt Tucker, and he's going to discuss the lockdown and reopening framework. Go ahead, Matt.
Great, thanks, Brian. Well, I'm sitting here at the Sportsplex, and I've never heard it so quiet in an evening. So it's kind of eerie, actually. No kids yelling, screaming, no parents at each other. Anyway, get to talk to you guys. It's all great. I guess since we last chatted back in the first part of December, our facilities, we were in the orange level, and shortly after that, we're in the orange. We had all our facilities going. Minor sports, they were in full swing with their limited programming. We also had our municipal programs going as well. Things were good. People were active. That sort of came to a bit of a grinding halt once we moved into red in mid-December, where there were some minor sports teams didn't operate while we were in red. Others tried. Obviously, going into red, there was more restrictions that we had to put in place just within our facilities. Moving into red, we had to make the decision. We ended up closing our senior center. The numbers, we saw them starting to go down, and just it wasn't going to work in red with the programming there. We also closed our tourism visitors center at the same time. The one thing that did remain open at the center was the washrooms, just for people downtown Elora walking. The other washrooms that remained open were were Bissell Park, Forfar, and the Wayscale washrooms downtown Fergus. So those were the washrooms that stayed open while we were in red. And then, yeah, obviously we got the news. We on the 26th, we moved into lockdown, and that to adjust to that, it was quite the adjustment. Just with staff at that time, well, probably 3 days before Christmas, there was a total of 62 staff that were put on leave. A lot of that, were pool staff, rink rats, part-time staff. Then from there, it was a bit of a change. Again, here, quiet building, but we were able to get some more maintenance done, which was a good thing. One of the things that we started to look into was taking a look at our main pool. The last shutdown back in the spring, we were able to grout our leisure pool, our hot tub, and some of the main deck. We decided that we would take the water out of the main pool and get a really good look. And after draining all that water, sorry I don't have the quantity there to share that, but we did notice that there was some tile repair that we needed to do, and there's a lot of grout work. So we sort of made that decision just recently to move forward with the regrouting and tile repair. And we're hoping, there was some prep work that we had to get done before this work gets done. So staff have been in there working diligently to get that ready, and we're hoping the grout and tile repair to start up next week if all goes well. Just carrying on with the staffing, urban forestry was busy with our trimming, out pruning trees. We were just along Bellside today, actually, doing some work, and also capital work going on as well. So as far as the urban forestry portion goes, we were really affected. Park staff, all our parks have been open. We've seen a huge increase in tobogganing, and we've also looked at having staff help out with outdoor rinks. So right now we've got 11 in total across Center Wellington, and driving out in the evening, it's great to see the kids out there. Like, it's amazing, just the amount of, we've got 11 outdoor rinks. We're getting volunteers helping us, and you look in people's backyards, there's a lot of outdoor rinks in backyards as well. So it's nice to see families and kids getting out, getting some fresh air. And I know obviously this past week has been pretty fresh too. So but it's not stopping people from getting out, which is a good thing. As far as our horticulture, we've already started growing for the summer season. So we're really busy there. We don't have the volunteers helping like we have in the past. So we're hoping to keep on top of that. And we are getting staff in there helping Marissa a little bit as well, just to keep on track. With moving forward with some of our community service staff, we've had to redeploy staff. Two actually moved over to Public Works just before Christmas, knowing that in red we were able to move a couple staff over. There was a couple staff that left the Public Works at about the same time, and those people slipped into those positions. We also redeployed two other staff just after Christmas, first part of January, into Public Works as well. And basically they're out redoing all the fire numbers within the township. So the numbers that are getting changed, there's more than just a number. It'll be their fire number and their road. So it'll be say, what's a good one? We'll pick on Matheson Street. If 67 Matheson Street, before it would just say 67. So all those numbers are being changed, and Public Works, it was one of those projects where they were going to do if they had spare time, and getting that done, I think, is important just for people's safety and if there is an emergency. So that has worked out well for a few staff. There was 3 other staff that were redeployed to our planning departments, and they're working on our rural heritage registry, which is out going in the field, getting pictures and putting some of that work together for that. And also there's another job that someone is doing, it's taking documents and scanning them and getting them put into the system. So it's jobs that have been put aside and never really had enough staff to get that work done. So it has worked out well that we've been able to redeploy some staff without having more go on leave. Some of the other staff that maintenance staff that we do still have running, obviously they're helping us with the pool. They're helping with our parks. We've taken on there's more garbage out in the parks now with the rinks and the toboggan hills. We've taken on the downtown garbages, just help Public Works out as well, just with the snow events. So our staff are busy. We've got a lot of maintenance inside that we're taking care of as well as our routine checks of our facilities, making sure everything is running properly. One thing that we did decide to do was take an ice pad out. So we've pad B has been taken out, and we're currently working with our community groups, our minor sports groups, just talking about, okay, what's our next steps? And we're still waiting to hear from the government to sort of give us direction of what they're planning. There's some groups that are saying, they've got sort of a date in mind. If we're still closed at that time, they're going to pack it in. At that time, we'll sort of take a look, and we might take out another ice pad. But we're going to wait until we hear more of an announcement from the government. We're also working with the groups. We haven't reached out to the groups yet, but we're looking at talking to lacrosse, soccer, rugby, baseball, and see, once the training does come in, if we go back into red, there's an opportunity for maybe some of those groups to rent some Pad B to look at some skill development, and hopefully some will jump on that option. So that will be available for them. Also, sorry if there's a couple other staff. So there were a couple other staff that got redeployed. We've had, the townships had some real issues with people skating on storm ponds. And I'm not sure, just recently in Milton, there was a child that drowned on a storm pond. And that's what we've tried to do. We've got a couple staff that are actually helping monitor the storm ponds, as well as they started helping us make some of the ice rinks that we have in our parks. So it's been good. It's been an education piece. We haven't given them the badge where they're the police. They're just going with paper, documents, and just passing out information to the different people that are on there. And the nice thing is there's one park that we put an ice rink in, and that's pretty much eliminated people skating on the 2 storm ponds. So it's worked out real well. The nice thing is, we've started as staff putting together 5 ice rinks, and already. They're in the different neighborhoods. There's 2 neighborhood groups that want to volunteer, and they're saying, you know what, we're going to do this every year. So it's working out real well. Where next year we'll have hopefully the same amount of rinks again, and hopefully we have this cool weather. I think Pat, if I missed anything, I went through a lot of information. Just one thing that we do, we've got a SWORF, it's a recreation group in southwestern Ontario that we keep in contact with. We're emailing back and forth, just trying to get information and just sort of see what they're doing with their different strategies with their facilities. And it's amazing just looking at the amount of arenas now that are without ice. They've just decided that that we're going to pull the plug. That's what council has decided. I think for us, the approach is keeping the ice in. We basically take the temperature and we raise it. Our machines are rarely running. It's got that base where it's really no expense to keep the ice inside. There's some arenas that have taken their ice out, and if there is a demand, they're talking about maybe putting the ice back in, which that is a huge expense there. So I think doing it this way, I think we're going in the right direction. I think that's it. Pat, Dorothy, if I missed anything at all.
Wow, that was great. Thank you, Matt. I was just going to add, so we do have as a strategy made some assumptions. If the February 11th is the end of lockdown, if we are able to open in similar restrictions as red, which was sort of the last restrictions we had before the lockdown, we do have dates set for reopening the fitness center, fitness classes, the 2 pads of ice that we still have. And then it'll be a little bit later delay to open the aquatic center once we finish that maintenance work. But this has been an excellent window to do that maintenance work, simply because we were going to have to do that within the next year or 2 anyways, shutting down the whole pool again for another month to do the work. So we've really captured the opportunity here to get that done. It wasn't planned, but with the shutdown, we took advantage of that. So we do have some dates in mind, assuming, like I said, February 11th is the go date by the province, and we are also able to open. We do not know what they will say. They have a lot of concerns over fitness centers, people working out without masks, so that may be off the table. But if anyone has anyone that they know really close that's Doug Ford's best friend, we are very interested to know, as everybody is, what that lockdown lift date will be and what the restrictions will be when we do. But we're doing our best to pivot as fast as quick as we can. And we're already thinking about what are we doing this summer. So we're assuming this summer will look really good for sports and activities, and all of our plans are in place to have a good summer here in Center Wellington. That's about it. Thanks very much, Matt. That was a lot of information, but of course, we'll take it back to you, Brian, if you have, if anyone has questions.
I was just going to say that I have a friend who lives across the road from Doug Ford. I'll suggest to him that he run across the road and ask for a cup of information, to borrow a cup of information. So we'll see. Anyone have any comments or questions about Matt's presentation?
Jennifer has a question, Brian. I'm not sure you can see her.
Ah, there you are, Jennifer. Thanks. Go ahead.
Thanks, Brian. No, I just wanted to say an amazing props to you all about all the outdoor rinks in the community. 11 rinks, and the size of our community is great, and they're great size rinks, and people are all spread out, and they're kept I've heard so much positive feedback from everyone across the community. Those that are kind of used to getting out there and skating, and those that might be trying it with their families for the first time. So I think there's really great opportunities, especially now when, families are finding it hard to keep their little ones kind of moving. So it's really great to see, and I hear nothing but positive feedback on that. So great job for everyone. And then the other thing, I just really hope that, come March, that, you know, we kind of see that return to programming and activity. And hopefully, Matt, all those people you were telling us that you unfortunately had to, you know, lay off or redeploy, you're telling us how everybody's back and busy, and yeah. But
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Okay, thanks, everyone. The next item on the agenda is the Healthy Growth Advisory Committee. I'm now the representative on that committee. I'm sure it's no secret that we have a real problem in this community with lack of affordable rental spaces. And the Healthy Growth Committee has been given a mandate over the next few months to investigate and come up with recommendations for, well, the goal is to obtain more attainable rental accommodation. There are many ways to do it, and many communities in Ontario are doing it and even have rewards for people who create rentable space. So it's an interesting area. I'm loving this particular program and where we're going with it. So that's what we're working on. We have a big committee and a lot of ideas, and we're going to proceed with that. So I'll be happy to be reporting on that over the course of the next few months. Any concerns or questions? Okay, I'm not hearing anything. So we'll move to Kurt. Any report on the Indoor Turf Facility Subcommittee?
No, I had a few funny remarks, but I always forget we're being recorded. So I'll stay on the straight and narrow, and status quo, no updates to provide.
Okay. Thanks. That'll happen in future. Neil, I think you're going to give us an update on council's activities.
Yeah, it's been a while. I won't go through everything that we've done since the last time this committee met, because that was a long time. I think the biggest thing is that we finally passed the budget. And the budget came in at 1.3% increase. I think I'm quite happy with it because it paid attention to an asset management plan, which a lot of people don't understand. You guys have a better grasp on it because we talk about parks and rec facilities all the time, and those are assets, and the money has to be put aside year after year after year. So when we have to fix them, we're not raising taxes by 7 and 8% to put a new ice pad in. That, you know, we've got money put aside to fix it, and of that, we are fixing the ice pad at the Allura Arena this year, I believe. Pat, are we still going forward with that? And that was in the budget. But it was a balance between raising taxes or cutting taxes and paying attention to the asset management plan. And I think we came with a nice balance. And one of the things I want to do here is express my thanks to all the staff, because all the staff of Center Wellington took a 0% increase in this crisis so that we could manage that budget. And so kudos to all the staff that are on this call. There was no fuss, no muss. It just was that this is what we need to do and let's get to work. And to me, that was very uplifting in this community. And I know there are others who wanted it lower, but that's, it pays attention to that asset management plan so that we're not going to have to turn to taxpayers in 2 or 3 years and say, we need to have 4, 5, and 6% increases. And those are deadly decisions to make. So we paid attention to that. And I think we came forward with the balanced budget. And that's it for me.
Thanks, Neil. We're going to move on to staff updates. Parks and facilities. That'd be Pat.
I can take this one, Pat.
Oh,
yeah, no worries. Most of my update was just with the reopening, but just wanted to share like a couple projects that we are working on. And we'll probably touch more a bit on the capital stuff further down the agenda, but we got staff out working, putting picnic tables together. So we're doing different little projects where we try and get it done throughout the summer, but we're trying to get ahead of the game. So we have some picnic table replacements. We've got other little projects that we're trying to get done, which is good. We're ahead of the curve on hopefully some of the stuff. Other thing I just want to share, we're still opening our doors, our hall doors here at the Sportsplex for blood donor clinics. It's once a month, and also there's 2 or 3 times this month we've had the Wellington Dufferin Health Unit in doing some training in our halls. So I just wanted to pass that on. That's really the only time our doors have been open, but I just wanted to share that with the committee. And more of my updates will be further on in the agenda.
Thanks again, Matt. Cultural and special events.
That would be me, Brian.
Yep.
I just want to, it's a quick update. I'm not sure if Matt touched on this or not, and I apologize if he did, but our Fergus Grand Theatre remains closed and will remain closed until July 1st before we bring our staff back. He has been on declared emergency leave since the pandemic started, and so he will keep the theatre closed until July the 1st. And we're hoping to have programming in September brought back, all things going in that direction. The senior center, Matt touched on, we closed during the red zone, but all during the last year, during the pandemic, we began offering virtual classes to our seniors. And they've really started to take off, and we've suddenly come to the conclusion that virtual classes are here to stay now. Our seniors are loving them. They're well attended. And we're really touching a group of the population that don't typically are able to attend our classes because they can't get out. And so just to give you an example, in November, we had 722 people participate in virtual classes. In January, just this past month, we had almost 1,300 participate. So it's really, really growing. We're adding more classes as we go along. It's booming. And so really, really happy about that. And like I said, we're touching a population that normally wouldn't even step foot into our building. So it's all great. And then I just want to touch real quick about tourism, that in the past 3 years, we had a very strong partnership with our provincial partners, RTO4, and they've really helped us out, bringing Allure and Fergus to the forefront in tourism. And as a result of COVID, of course, we haven't been able to promote either town. We can't. We don't want to encourage people coming to our towns right now. So as a good thing, they've extended our membership one more year with us, our partnership one more year with us. So we're actively working on other projects with them this year, and what hopefully a spring or fall campaign may look like to get tourism back up and running and promoting our two communities. So that's a good news piece as well. So that's all I have to report, unless anybody has any questions.
Are there any questions?
Thank you.
Good. Thanks a lot, Dorothy. Are we going back to you, Matt, for the item 7.3?
I think I'm going to take that one, right, Matt?
Okay.
I'll start.
Yep, sure, it's all your.
Okay,
Thanks,
so
Matt.
departmental and capital update. So obviously the budget is completed, and that informs our 2021 capital projects. And it also informs our equipment replacement, vehicle and equipment replacement. So I'm not going to list every single thing we're doing, like replacing the lacrosse nets, but I will hit some of the highlights of some of the different things that we are working on. So with respect to new capital projects approved for 2021, the big one is our Allure Community Center ice pad replacement for 1.3 million. And then we have another project for an outdoor basketball multi-use court, which will be outside in the grounds of the Center Wellington Sportsplex. So a lot of people ask where that's going to be. Our vision is where the old tennis courts were, where they play the road hockey games. So that's where we're thinking that will go. The other project is, I'm not sure if I think last meeting we talked about the park identification program, and we're continuing that in 2021. We have some work on Trestle Bridge Trail for ditch improvement. There's some flooding that goes on in one section, and we'll be doing some ditch work. The Beatty Hollow Neighborhood Park will be installed or worked on or completed hopefully in 2021. And then we have some other equipment, a water trailer and some parks trucks, but those are the new projects for 2021. And then if I go to our facility equipment replacement for 2021, some of the highlights, I know some of you won't be as excited as Matt is about getting new condensers for both arenas and at the Sportsplex, but that's an $80,000 item, and it's very exciting to get new ice making equipment. And then we have the a pool boiler also being replaced at $65,000. The two signs, the one at the Sportsplex and the one just by in Elora by the fire hall, are getting refurbished. So right now, some of the lights don't work at the one at the Sportsplex, so they will be getting a new digital overhaul. The structures will remain the same. And then we also have a number of little projects to improve the Fergus Grand Theatre for just over $57,000. And the tennis courts at the Sportsplex are getting asphalt and recolored. So that's exciting. We'll be adding pickleball lines at that time to those courts. For playground equipment, Douglas Park, which is in Bellwood, is getting new playground equipment. The O'Brien Park will open in the spring. That has been a project ongoing, and we were very fortunate to get a top up on that. So we will be putting rubber surfacing at that location in the playground. So we're excited about that, and that should open in the spring. That project's almost done. Graham Park, I'm going to talk a bit about that one, and then in a little bit. And Ferrier Park in Fergus is getting a new play structure. Some of the other things that we are moving forward on in 2021, a lot of our projects, so there's still a number of 2020 projects that did not get completed due to COVID. So we'll have all of those to work on as well. The McDonald projects, one that we'll start to see come to fruition is the Bissell ice pad replacement, that structure coming out and a new one going in. Granwood Park is still closed, but will be opening in the spring. It's almost ready to go. So is Summerfield Park Phase 1. You can see it's all there. It's just a matter of having the grass take and all of those kinds of things in the spring, and we'll be doing a grand opening. I already talked about O'Brien Park, and then the Southridge Washroom is complete. Just a matter of opening the doors for that one in the spring. So hats off to all of our team, like Matt, who has worked diligently on all these capital projects to see them finish completed. The Graham Parkland Development Agreement is going to be going to council in February. We have a developer who has making a significant donation to the refurbishment of that park. And so the township had already planned to replace the play equipment there. And this developer has said, I would like to also invest in that park. So you'll see some significant improvements there. We are also working on a parkland development agreement for the Haylock Youngblood residential development. And these are some of the department other things. The other things we're doing, and we've mentioned about the OLG funding going out to Laura Centre for the Arts and Scottish Festival. So we'll be looking to implement those electrical and water upgrades for the Scottish Festival this summer before we get to their event. Fingers crossed they hold their event. We have the budget was passed, and just so you're aware, another decision by council was to not increase any of the rates and fees in 2021 for parks and recreation rentals or facilities or memberships or anything. So that went out in a zero increase. And how we've worked the budget, we closed the budget in we will be closing 2020 and looked how to prepare. It was a challenging budget to put together, knowing COVID was still in our midst. And so what we have done is created a budget as if there was no COVID and a budget with COVID. And then the difference between that is a number that will be taking out of the reserves and the provincial funding, so that the COVID impact is not going to hit the taxation. It is going to be covered other ways because we recognize revenues are now, but they should be without these facilities being rented and used in the capacity they were before. And then coming to council also is in February is the McDonald report to council. So the McDonald projects, there were 8 projects that received capital funding through the McDonald Fund, and only 2 have completed. Some have been delayed to COVID, and others we're having some challenges getting over the finish line. So we're taking a report to council and asking that that CSAC be brought back into the fold to help us decide how to move forward on some of these projects. So you'll hear the outcomes of that at our next meeting. So those are some of the projects that are going on in the department while we move forward into 2021. Any questions about anything? Or Matt, did I miss anything that you wanted to mention?
Oh, that was a great summary, Pat.
Just how excited you are about condensers, right?
Working on it today. Pretty exciting.
Are there any comments or questions?
I think Jennifer has her hand up.
Hi, go ahead, Jennifer.
Thanks, Brian. Just a question. Has the pad replacement, like I know the budget just passed, but has the pad replacement in Elora been scheduled? Like, is there a timeline associated with that?
Not at this time. We're just still trying to work out the details of that project and the scale and scope. So as soon as we have that underway, we will be sharing that information. Due to the delay in the budget and delays in the project and COVID, it may not happen until 2022, but that's just a heads up. We are going to try and get it done this year, but we're still we're behind the 8 ball because we want to get it done if we do it this year before the ice goes back in. So we don't want to interrupt all of everybody's activity. So we're still working with our user groups and things to sort that out.
Great. Neil?
Yeah, speaking about that ice pad, you haven't mentioned it, so I know we haven't heard anything, but you haven't heard a no or a yes regarding we put in a request for a grant or for, the government program last year to make that project bigger in scope. And have we been eliminated from that? Have we heard anything from the federal and provincial government on
that? That's an easy answer. No, we have not heard yet. So that is another reason we're still not sure when that project would start. So as soon as we hear, Neil, we will be, if we did get the funding or not, that'll help trigger our next steps.
Anyone else? Well, I believe this will bring our meeting to an end. We're slated to gather again on March the 3rd at 6 p.m. I assume everyone's prepared to adjourn. Nothing else on anyone's mind. Thank you, everyone, for really wonderful questions, information. It's a pleasure doing this. So good night, all, and we'll see you around.
that? Stay safe, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Good night.
Thanks, everyone.